Shalom Uvracha, good evening, and welcome to this very important Maimed, this very important event with Siyata Dishmai, with none other than the renowned Rabbi Yakov Horowitz Shlita. If I may just preface, there's a fascinating Gemara. Those who have been learning Daf Yomi, it's at the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph Maseches Chagiga. Two Talmidim, two disciples of Rabbi Yeshua, come to visit their Rebbe. It's Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, and he says to them, "Sanu, tell me a chiddush." And they say, "No, Rebbe, Meimecha Anishosin, we want to hear a Dvar Torah from you." He says, "Come on, my dear Talmidim, Ein Beis Menrush B'li Chiddush, you had to have heard something. Tell me, who was darshaning this week?" And they responded to their illustrious Rebbe. They said it was the week of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah darshaning. And what did he darshan? Gemara says he was discussing a posuk in Parshas Vayelech, revolving around the mitzvah of Hakel. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah questioned, "I understand, Anoshim Bom Limud, they're coming to learn. Anoshim Bos Lishmo, they're coming to listen. Taflam Aboim. Why are the fledgling? Why are the youth? Why are the children coming? What are they going to gain? They don't have a chiyuv, a mitzvah, Talmud Torah just yet. And they're not coming Lishmo. What's the tachlis? What's the purpose?" And he said, "Taflam Abom Kedei Lahavi Schar L'Me'avayim, to increase the reward to those who bring them." He listens to this vart, the Rebbe, Rabbi Yeshua, and he says, "Margalas Taiva Haisa B'Yedchem U'Bikashtum La'avdim." Many such a gem, as such a precious jewel. Why'd you wait? Why'd you hesitate? And he was astounded. What a teeth of art, what a profound insight. Asks Rameir Simcha L'Meshach Chochma Parshas Vayelech, asks the Aderes, the father-in-law of Cook, and his Kuntra Zeich L'Mikdash Mitzvahs Hakel, asks the Ben Yehoyada, then Das Torah and numerous others for him. What's the Graisa Chiddush? You know why you bring the children? You bring the children Kedei Lahavi Schar. He was so despoiled. He was so taken aback and astounded. Why did this matter so much to him? And they all explain the idea is because he, Rabbi Yeshua, and when he was a young child, he is the individual about whom we read in Perkei Avos, Perk Beis Mishnah Ches, Chamisha Tamidim Hoyulo, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He had 5 close disciples, and he was Monashich, and he enumerated and extolled all their virtues. He highlighted their various milas. And about Rabbi Yeshua, that's Yeshua ben Chanani, he said, "Ashrei Yoladato, praiseworthy and fortunate is the Yiddish mama, the mother who brought this holy child into the world." And everybody wonders, it beckons our scrutiny. Ashrei Yoladato, you're praising the mother. What did she do that's such a big deal? Right, so Mavajim Ibar Tanur, the Perish Arav, Hofanart Alatar in the Mishnah and Abbas Beis Ches. And he cites Yeshomer Malpi, the Yushami, and Yavamas Perkalav Oluchahei. And that says that when she was pregnant with this Rabbi Yeshua, she went to the Beis Medrash and said, "I only want my child to hear Divrei Torah. I want him to remain ever pure and pristine." And then when he was born, he was mutul ba'araso, so he was in his crib, in a stroller. And she'd always walk to be in proximity to Bate Kinesias, to Bate Midrashas. "I want my son to be surrounded, enveloped by endless Kedusha. I don't want any tumah to infiltrate. I don't want it to penetrate his Dalet Amis, Torah, Tefillah. I want pure and pristine Neshama, Ashrei Yoladato." What was his praise? His praise was, look at the mother who brought him into the world. Chaim Volozhin said, "I don't just envy the Olam Haba of the Vilna Gaon, my dear Rebbe Mufak. I even more am envious of the Olam Haba of the mother, the Yiddish mama who brought the Gra into the world. Because there's no way to produce a Vilna Gaon unless you ensure and safeguard that he was pure, pristine from beginning to end. Ashrei Yoladato. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanani is the appropriate demand, the Omer, to be nispol, to be astounded. Margalis, why was it such a gem? Because this is what made me. I am who I am today, he proclaimed, because my Yiddish mama took care. And she watched and she spoke to me and kept me ever pure, pristine, a heilig and neshama. That's already what began from my incipient stages, my fledgling years. And that's what she preserved. He became one of the Gedolei Hador. Now we fast forward to our times. Ikvasod, the Mashiach, more difficult than ever to keep our holy children. ever pure and pristine, ever kodesh v'tohor. The Rambam even paskins the well-known Gemara and Shabbos Kuf Yotesim and Beis. Writes the Rambam Milchus Talmud Torah per Beis Halach Aleph Ein Olam Eskayim Ella. The entire world is predicated mavusas on what Hevel Piyam of Tinoko Shabeis Rabban. They were not Toim Tam Chet. They're pure, pristine. They're ever Kaddish and Torah. The entire world is mavusas and Miyusad. It's built on these holy, holy children. They're the ones keeping the world going, and the ones helping us get there. The ones helping us maintain the Kedusha, the Torah, protecting our dear, precious, beloved children are the Rabbi Yakov Horowitz Shlitas in the world. Yes, the founder and dean of Yeshiva Darchei Noam and Bright Beginnings, and let's stay safe. We know how many books, how many lectures, you could see him online. One individual making sure that the Hevel Piyam of Tinoka Shabeis Rabban remains ever pure, pristine, even Bismanenu, even in the door of Ikvus on the Mashiach, even with Rahman al-Itzlan, all the abuse cases, everything that's so pervasive in society today. And we have Baruch Hashem, a Yid, who steps up to the plate, B'malkim Sheina Noshim Ishtadol Yosish. What is schus and a covet for Klal Yisrael that we have such a Yid in our midst, such a renowned educator, such an all-star mechanech, such a person perhaps first and foremost who truly, profoundly cares about the holiness and the pure, pristine quality of every single precious holy Yiddish child. About Rabbi Horowitz, we can honestly say, Ashrei Yoladato, I didn't have the schus of knowing. I don't know his Yiddish mama, but I can only imagine, the Olam Haba, that his Yiddish mama has, Asher Yoladato. Baruch Hashem, we have the schus tonight, and those in Cedars had the schus to hear Rabbi Horowitz last night. So essential, so integral to raising children today. It's a gewaldige schus to introduce to you the renowned, the choshev Rabbi Yakov Horowitz Shlita, to be machazek us, to be ma'oded us, to guide us, to be machanech us in Klal Yisrael. Ashrei Yoladato, and Be'ez Hashem Yisbrach with his guidance, we could say about each and every one of you, Ashrei Yoladato, that you are bringing the next generation of pure, pristine children to raise them to become the next Gedolim. Hatzlacha and bracha, Yishkayach, without further ado, Rabbi Yakov Horowitz Shlita.
Bishas Rav Eytan, Rav, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your introduction and for all you do for the Klal. I'm going to be speaking for about 45 minutes, and then we'll take some questions. So I'd love it to be as interactive as possible. We're going to be talking about trust and open communication. And one of the things, we wrote on the flyer that it's Child Safety 2.0. And what I had in mind with that is that this is what we technically consider Child Safety 1.0. This is what... Thank you for nodding. I saw quite a few heads nodding. This is what we've learned. This is what we've been teaching. And Rav Eytan, I mentioned it yesterday, and in 5 towns, and it's absolutely true that your community, your kehillah, 5 towns and Far Rockaway together, was really the cutting edge of so many different initiatives for children. Whether it was Kahal so many years ago, that all the schools worked together to support the children who needed more than an average yeshiva could provide about this child safety. So you've all been through this. And I'll review it because it's important to review. But this is what I consider the 2.0. The next component of it is to really have that level of communication. Because when I started reading the literature on child safety education years ago, it sort of struck me that they took it as a given that this package here assumes that parents speak to their children, which we do, but it also assumes that the children speak to their parents. And primarily, these are the types of conversations that are uncomfortable. And we know from research and anecdotally, it's not an easy conversation to have with parents. So I've been adding it to my classes for many years now, but this is the part that I really want to stress and talk about, how to create the environment at home so that your children are comfortable talking to you about anything. I think, Bechlal, I think for any part of parenting and chinuch and all of it, it's critically important that you have this relationship with your children. But for this situation, for this parsha, it's certainly more than ever. So let's go through the general safety just quickly. No secrets from parents. We train children from very, very young age that people are not supposed to tell them anything and say, don't tell your parents. This is between us. Nobody should ever do this. There is no adult in their life that should do this. And you wonder if this stuff really works, as they say. I did the first child safety class in Yeshiva Dar Chinam before the summer, over 20 years ago, before it was more commonplace to do it. I had heard from the teenagers I was working with, I was concerned about that in Monsey and summer camps, and so I didn't feel qualified to do it. I brought someone in to talk about child safety. This was right before the summer in June. And he gave these messages. The following May, 2 days before Shavuos, one of our English teachers in the second grade gave the kids an art project. And what they did was they cut out flowers and they pasted them, and they cut from paper like images of flowers. They pasted it, left it out to dry, and the next day they were going to color it and bring it home. So the teacher told the kids on the way out, "Shh, don't tell mommy, it's a surprise." And we dismissed the buses at 4:15, and my phone started ringing at about 4:18. And literally, I knew the stop. The yeshiva was small at the time. I knew the stops by heart. And you could see the kids would come one after another. 4:18 was Goldstein, 4:21 was there. They were calling. Their son came home from school. I can't believe. They knew that they didn't think that there was anything inappropriate. They were blown away, as I was, that the kids actually remembered. And by the way, it's always important to. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of teaching, a beginning of a conversation, the beginning of a mindset. And I think you always add whatever you could add to it. So when the presenter spoke, I got up afterwards and said, "Look, I would suggest that I added a few points." And one of the things I said is, with this thing of don't tell secrets, tell your children that if someone does tell them to keep a secret from you, and they tell you, you'll give them a prize. You'll give them something, you'll give them you'll put something. So the kids came home, and they said, Mommy, Mora said we shouldn't tell you. They were not there. And I remember thinking to myself, Rabbi Shalom, this stuff really works. Okay? So feel empowered. I'm also going to explain to you why this works, and I think it's very important that you do feel empowered and to feel that this is something that can be done. Your body belongs to you is the notion of personal space. Children at a very young age understand that things belong to them. We're training them that they belong to them. And one of the things that effective child safety education accomplishes is that some of the great things that we teach our children become problematic in this space. We teach our children to share. We teach our children to respect everyone, to respect elders, certainly to respect people in positions of authority. We don't want to change that. We want to keep it that way. But we need to introduce caveats to that and explain it to that. So therefore, explaining to the children that, of course, we share, but your body things belong to you. Excuse me, please. Excuse me. And the research actually shows that children who are trained at home to have their own personal space, whether it's a drawer of their own, if you look in the book, the kid's showing he has, my ball belongs to me, this belongs to me, he has his own space. So the research shows that children who are trained from home to respect personal space are far more likely to exhibit defensive behavior. In other words, if everything else is the same, you have two kids, everything else is the same, but one was, that was the culture of their home, that child is more likely to defend themselves. And there's so many ways that you can reinforce this with the children. And again, when you do this, it should not be frightening. It should not frighten the children. The research shows that it actually inhibits the thinking when you're frightened. That's why I don't tell scary stories, or I'm just talking to you about being empowered, which I believe you should be. So I think this is don't frighten them when you talk to them. But again, you're teaching the children that this space, you can reinforce this. One thing that I used to do in yeshiva, is that I would, if children would fight with each other or take someone else's things, I would talk to them about, you're in somebody's space. It's the same thing. You're saying basically you did something inappropriate. But when you just add that space thing, it just reinforces their mind. It's just a good way to do it. You talk, and in the playground, I used to do this. That from across the hall, all the kids in yeshiva knew what that meant. When I meant you're in somebody's box, when I would see kids, So again, this is something simple but important and should be reinforced. Good touching, bad touching. Some touching is okay. Some touching is not okay. Touching a bathing suit is a good way to explain it. Something covered by a bathing suit is something, nobody should be touching you in that space. The experts say that it's important to list the exceptions to this rule very precisely. Of course, younger children need the attention of adults to touch them in private spaces, to bathe them, to when they soil themselves or whatever. So it's important not to say this is, no one should touch you in private space except people in our family or people we know. We know, unfortunately, nebuch, we know the abusers are very often in that inner circle sometimes, even in the family. So very precisely, no one should touch you in a private space except a doctor during a visit when one of us is in the room. Babi, or Savta when she comes over to babysit, or an ozeret, or however you word it, again, very precisely. The last one is actually going to tie into a lot of what we're talking about tonight. And it's not that clear and precise like these first three are. It's really a hergish, it's a feeling. And what we're trying to convey to children is that if they feel uncomfortable, they should get out of a situation. If they feel uncomfortable for any reason, they have a right to get out, and you will support their right to get out. During Q&A yesterday, a number of parents asked what happens if people in the family, give them these mushy kisses that they don't like, and they come tell you about it, what to do. If you're interested, I'll be glad to talk about it. It's a common question that does come up. I do believe you should still, be diplomatic, but I think it's important that children have the right to say no. But we'll talk about that later. But that's really the important part really is because, as we're going to learn later, the grooming process is a process where an abuser gradually encroaches slowly on the space of the child. There usually is a point far before the abuse takes place that the children start to feel uncomfortable. I've heard this from many victims, survivors. And there are so many different ways to explain it. You can explain it on a body, put a hand on the shoulder, and if the child comes home and says, somebody touched me on my shoulder today, I felt uncomfortable, and you say, did he touch you in a private space? No. Whew, great. Now, the children might not be articulate enough or have the vocabulary to say, yeah, but he was looking at me in a really creepy way, or his hand was there for a very long time. So when you hear that, then the educational message is to trust your children and tell them it doesn't make a difference, even if they can't explain it to you. You support their right. That means that if that person comes over, and it could be a relative, if your brother-in-law comes over and says, I had your daughter, your son on my lap, and I was doing nothing, was innocent, and she said, I don't like this, I feel uncomfortable, and she left. And expecting you to say, I'm going to talk to my daughter about this, you say, no, that's what we teach them, that if they feel uncomfortable, they should leave. Again, I'm glad to go over this during Q&A. So let's talk about what we really want to talk about tonight, trust, communication, again, what I call 2.0, the next, really taking it to the next level, and ask if your kids would tell you. Would your kids tell you if there was something going on? Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a child abuse situation. And I'll show you some scenario. We'll go a little bit later, some case studies of things that people would be uncomfortable telling their parents. So we'll talk about those. One of them is that, let's say, these are all things that I've heard from people. For example, a bacha comes home, True story, someone came to me, a father called me that his son, many years ago, his son came out from yeshiva and said, Ta, I love yeshiva, I love Yiddishkeit. This kid was an A-plus student, like my brother, Rabbi Yehuda. So, not me. So he was, he told his father, he says, listen, I'm fine with being Yiddish, with being frum, but I don't believe anything they're teaching me in yeshiva. And I said, I'll talk to Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita, who's been a Paisik for the last 23 years. I said, I'll talk to the Rashiva about it and get back to you. But in the meantime, you're an amazing father because he told you. And he knew that it would make you really unhappy, and he still told you. So kol hakavod to you, I'll get back to you. And I'll get back to you if you want to hear the answer. I'll be glad to discuss it during Q&A. Rabbi Shmuel had an answer that was just really mind-blowing, incredibly insightful, and not what I thought he would answer. It was brilliant. Not that he needs my haskama, but okay. So that's really a question. Would your kids tell you? And there was a situation. If I may be, forgive me. This is a very important topic. There was a situation in the greater New York area. The school that happened to have handled it magnificently well. I'm not going to mention the school. It's not important. But there was a faculty member, administrator in the school that was making, excuse me, it was a co-ed school. One of the administrators was making phony social media accounts, posing as a girl. There was a man who was an administrator, and he was sending pictures to the boys, and the teenage boys in the middle school, high school, I think it was. And then, he would up the ante, he send more pictures, you send me, I'll send you. And sooner or later, the kids would bug out and stop, and then he'd say, I'm going to put everything you sent me so far, I'm going to put up online. It was a really nasty, devilish, horrible way of doing it. And he was caught because someone told the parents. A 15-year-old kid, excuse me, a 15-year-old kid. Just imagine that conversation, folks. Imagine a kid coming home and telling the parents, I've been doing everything you told me not to do for the last 6 months. I've been sending pictures of myself in the various stages of undress to a girl. And could you imagine? But the kid had the conversation, and Baruch Hashem, people were stopped from getting harmed by this. So that's the question. It could be across the gamut, across the range. Would your children tell you? And we're going to be studying things like grooming, halo effect, just world theory. All of these things are become problematic. Every one of these three things become problematic if we don't understand them. Even when you do understand them, it gnaws on you a little bit. But the serial pedophiles who keep getting away with abusing children over many, many years, the Waldo situation, for example, you'll see that these types, this just world theory and the halo effect inhibit people from speaking up when they see things that don't look right to them. So one of the things, one of the ways to think about it, the old expression is, if you want to catch a thief, you got to think like a thief, right? If you want to review a security system in your house, best idea is not to call someone from Koilel to come over and look it over. Someone who's been in jail for stealing, a thief, is the best one to look at your house because he'll know how to get in there, right? So that's the line. To catch a thief, think like a thief. So, God forbid, I don't mean chas v'shalom literally, but put yourself in the mindset of how they operate. And I'm going to show you a fantastic, phenomenal article that does just that, explains the grooming process. It's by a fellow named Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote Tipping Point, Blink, he wrote a magnificent 5,500-word essay in the New Yorker magazine years ago about Penn State with Jerry Sandusky and how he got away with it for 30 years. That's just an excellent piece. The link's available, but you can look it up. So the thinking is like this. If someone's doing a financial scam, what attributes are they looking for in a mark? Mark is, somebody that they have their eyes on, that they'd like to do a swindle on. Whether it could be any one of a phony real estate deal or some other investment. Again, stuff's not true. So the two things that they look for, there are others, but this is really what they like people who are naive. They don't know anything about money. And they also like people who are isolated. So why is that? Because if they're naive, they're less likely to ask probing questions. And if they're isolated, they're less likely to have someone in their family or friends who do. So what it looks like in the real world is, let's say, if someone is running a scam, they usually, let's say, will try to get families right after their wedding, couples right after their wedding, because they might not have financial background and they have wedding money, okay? Or elderly people, especially elderly singles. Now, this is exactly the way it works. That person, the scammer, has a document. But let's say he says, I'm doing a development, a retirement community, or I'm building homes. We're building X number of homes. If you get a 30% discount if you put up, $20,000 right now. It brings them a contract. Now, do you think the person would bring a contract to the first meeting? It's very unlikely. He would have to be incredibly foolish to do it. Why? Because he doesn't know who he's talking to. Maybe this woman's or man, maybe they're in the financial business. Maybe they have a background where they understand mortgages. So what they usually do is say, let's go off a coffee and talk first. So tell me, we have this great package, but I want to know, tell me a little bit about yourself. Do you understand if I explain, do I have to explain a mortgage to you, or do you? So if the person says, you don't got to explain it to me. My parents, since I'm 15, my parents got me involved in finances. You know what happens, right? They finish having the coffee. The guy's never showing up again, right? They make a meeting, second meeting, they don't come, okay? So why? Because they don't want people who know stuff. They're looking for someone who's there. If they say, well, you speak really slowly because I don't know anything about this, they say, aha, let's get back. Now, they might not even bring it the second time. The second time, they'll start talking about your family. Where are you from? Here. Where's your family? Yeah. Are you new here? Okay, so if someone says, we have no relatives, or, we're new to the community, or we're estranged from our family, that's why. Because the person found out already that this Mark doesn't have financial wherewithal or knowledge, but they don't know who he or she knows. So maybe they have a sibling, in-laws, parents, friends. So this is what they look for, naivete and isolated. And, it breaks my heart when people say there's a common misunderstanding. Thankfully, it's not that bad anymore. And you, Baruch Hashem, in this wonderful community, know the deal by now. But, people feel that we should keep our children sheltered, which we should. But this stuff it's the ultimate tznius. When I first started, we were zaycha to do this together with Art School, and Rabbi Horowitz was incredibly bold. He took this. We started this project 13 years ago, and the environment was very different. It was an extremely gutsy move on his part. And Tavi Olav Bracha, I wrote a sidebar in Mishpacha magazine when he was nifter, just thanking him for doing this. But the thinking was that you're teaching children, sex education or things that are birds and the bees, that it's not, look at the whole book, there's nothing there about it. So it's quite to the contrary, it's all about tznius. You're teaching children about private space, and they have a right to privacy, okay? But so the abusers look for children who, I'm sorry, I'm finished the thought. So when people say, we don't want to give children ideas, they're making them vulnerable. They're literally making them vulnerable. I tell them, you're not doing them a favor. You're harming them. That's not, okay? So abusers look for children who are not trained and children who are isolated. And the reason that trust is so important and communication is so important, it may sound a little harsh, but if your children can't talk to you about stuff, if they can't talk to you about things, they could be surrounded by family and still be isolated, because they can't say what they need to say to you. So that's what we're going to talk about, what you could do to get that. I'm going to talk about that article. I'm going to talk about this in greater detail. This is the article called In Plain View. Reb Chaim, where are you? There you go. Chaim, who's been, took care of all of this, has access to the PowerPoint. If any of you want it, you don't have to bother taking notes. Just get in touch with him, and he'll be glad to send it to you. It's not proprietary in any way. So this is a plain view. That's the piece. I'm going to read some excerpts. And here are some just case studies of situations, scenarios where kids would be uncomfortable. The first one is the high school bacher, right? Comes home, tells his father, I don't believe everything they're telling me. A child, a young man or woman who's chas v'shalom, who's being groomed. An uncomfortable conversation. Everybody in my class is vaping. You know, what do I do? You know, the child comes home and talks to the parents. So is that something that they're comfortable doing? This I never heard from a survivor who was saying that, you know, that it was actually a child, a teenager, late teens, and he said that, you know, I wasn't doing well in school and I tanked because of what happened to me. And everybody was asking me how I'm learning and how it's going and why I'm fighting with my friends and why I'm not doing homework and this and that. And he told me with such, I'm going to start crying, he told me with such emotion, he said, everybody's asking me how I'm doing, how I'm learning, how I'm davening, how I'm, you know, whatever I'm doing. He says, I have this 800-pound gorilla on my back. That's the only thing I want to talk about. Why doesn't somebody ask me, how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you feeling well? Okay, but that kid couldn't talk. And you know, someone who says, like, I love Yiddishkeit, but I'm not giving up on my phone. So this is what it looks like, folks. This is one of my more favorite slides. And it's an iceberg. And we know about 10% of the iceberg is above water, excuse me. And 90% is below. So if your children can't tell you what's going on, you see only the top. You don't see that stuff on bottom. And that's why it's really so important that you allow your children, ask yourself, would your kids tell you? I think it's one of the nicest things children can say, you know, on their way out of your home or for the rest of their lives, that we always felt comfortable talking to you about anything. Shimon Schwab Zatzal says that the first time the Torah uses the word friend, Reya, is by the story of Yehuda v'Tamar. Yehuda was in a not comfortable spot, and he trusted this person to watch his items. He had to share it with somebody, what went on, and he trusted this man. Rav Schwab says the Torah gave him a crown of a friend. Biyad re'ehu ha'adolami, a friend. And why is he a friend? Because a friend is someone you can tell anything to. And we're not supposed to be friends with our kids, but that's what it means. It means to give them this trust. By the way, that's Rav Schwab's word. That asterisk on the bottom is Yanki Horowitz. It's not the Rav Schwab Zechut Tzadik Bracha. It wasn't a family member that he went to. That's one of the difficulties we have. He was probably more comfortable telling this person than his brothers or his father, because he has to see him every day, right? So, and that's a real challenge for us. Okay. So this is just about a goal. Excuse me. I'm encouraging you, again, I think it's really good to set goals, to think about what you want your home to look like. What would you like your children, that takeaway messages about the culture of your home. Stephen Covey in the Seven Habits series talks about someone getting up at their 70th birthday. Someone has a 70th birthday party. It's a nicer way of saying your funeral. But he says somebody gets up at the 70th birthday party and starts talking about you. What would you like them to say about you? A great historian once said that during lifetimes of the leaders, the world leaders, they write billions and billions of words about them in the press. You just Google search, you see, an unlimited number. They said, 30 years later, all they get is a sentence. It's a great line. 30 years later, all you get is one sentence. Truman dropped the bomb. Roosevelt, Depression, World War II. What would you like the tagline to be? And I think it's really important that you do this. I'm going to show you later. I started doing under a minute parenting clips every day, and I started June 1st of this year, so we're at about 220 already. Six clips a week, a different topic every week, and I'll show you later, I did some of these, if you're interested, some of these clips, I did a series on the culture of your home, talking about this. But the basic way this goes is that the experts in planning and achieving your goals will talk about setting this up as a formula. You say that our home will be, don't talk about what you want to do, it will be like an action verb. It's going to be a place, let's say, where kids get, whatever you decide, a friendly place, okay? Because it's why is it important to you, and what are you going to do about it? Because that's, if you don't write what you're practically going to do about it, it's just a nice dream of yours. So what it looks like, and I'm using this as an example, not what we're talking about here, but if you want your home to be a place where kids are going to hang out in, that our children will be comfortable hanging out in, why? Because we'll be able to parent them better. Why? Because we'll know who their friends are. We won't have to worry about where they are. We don't want them getting into trouble. So these are 4 good reasons why you would want to do this. Therefore, what are you doing about it? So I'm a big believer in being straight up from the beginning and upfront and honest. And I think to really do this, the literature does not talk about it. I told you at the beginning, you add stuff that you think is helpful to different situations, like in child safety. You think of some additional things that you think are helpful. This is something that I felt is missing from that package, is being honest and telling people, sure, I want it all. Yeah, sure, I'm going to have it. It's important. Therefore, what are you doing about it? What's it going to cost you? And are you willing to pay? So if you want to have a home, let's say you say, I want to have a home where the kids are going to hang out in. That beautiful idea. Why? Because I'll get to know the kids, I'll stay out of trouble, the things we wrote before. Therefore, what's it going to cost you? I wrote one of them, money. Why is it going to cost money, folks? Sorry? You have to buy food. You have to buy different furniture. That furniture is going to break if lots of kids are over, right? So you're going to wind up buying more furniture. So it's going to cost you a lot of money. What else is it going to cost you? Sorry? Your time, right? You have a great investment of time. What else? Sorry? Lack of privacy, right? Bang, you have teenagers, these big creatures walking around your house all day. What else? So that's good. So we got, so far, I said money, time, privacy. What else? Blood pressure. Serenity, right? Good. Your blood pressure is going to go up. Excellent. Last night I mentioned that parents who don't get it sleep better at night, right? If you say, I want to be a parent that gets it, it's going to cost you a few yards of your small intestine. That's just the way it goes. And the people say, oh, how's everything? Oh, Baruch Hashem, everything's Mayridik, They go to sleep at night. So, but you're not going to know what's going on. Okay, so it's going to cost you your privacy. It'll cost you, your blood pressure will go up. Lots of different things. And that's when you make a decision. Am I willing to do this? And you might not be, and that's okay. So back to this one. We want our home to be a place where the kids are going to hang out. And why? Because it's going to provide, we will know what's going on. We will be able to raise them. The children don't need your help with the 10%, folks. The 10% they're fine in. They need your help with the other stuff. So I want to provide that. We want to provide our children with this. This is a runaway train. I took this picture on the way to Aspen in Colorado. And they have these steep mountains where you literally drive downhill for 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Like it's just, and the trucks, you ever see these signs, 20 miles an hour for low gear for trucks? Why? Because if they go too fast, those little brakes, the number of pounds in that truck, the brakes don't work. They just rub out right away, and God forbid, they just hurtle down they just get killed and kill lots of people, chas v'shalom. So they make these things when they see that, it happens to be made out of sand, so it takes away the energy from the truck. They just drive right up there, hopefully, and it saves their life. You're providing your children with this. I want our children to be able to talk to me about anything, because we want to be their off-ramp. We want to give them an off-ramp if they're getting into trouble. And this is something I wrote a few years ago, Purim, in the Times of Israel. It was actually the day before Purim. I've been, for many years now, in fact, I started the piece, I believe. For 20 years, I've been telling parents not to ply their children with alcohol and not to give, to be careful about it. I told parents to give the children no questions asked pickup. That means, even though we told you not to get drunk, but if you get drunk, you can call us, tell them that just right when they're leaving the house. Listen, sweetheart, you know how we feel about drinking, but if you're going to get drunk, you can call us, we will pick you up, We promise, 48 hours we won't discuss anything, and we're not going to give you the cold eyes. 48 hours. We'll talk about it, but we're not going to. Why is that? Because the kids get into such trouble if they don't have that. Or if that's this, folks. That is this. This is where the rubber meets the road. Oh, rubber meets the gravel, right? This is where the rubber meets the gravel, because what happens is the kids are drunk. They know it takes 4, 5, 6 hours to come out of it. So they're out with their friends Purim night, totally wasted. They love to just get home and throw up in your bathroom. That goes back to having your friends over at the houses and messing everything up. They don't want to get sick in someplace else, and they're afraid. Part of them are afraid. They can't talk to you. They're afraid to. So you don't have that. So that's what I wrote. And I wrote there that this is what you're really saying. Your life matters more than our rules. And so again, giving your children that opportunity is just an extraordinary, extraordinary gift. And this goes with that package. At this point, right, you say, hey, whoa, time out. Come on, do kids really do this? Is it okay? No consequences? Horowitz, what, you just like a Hefgewelt, free for all? How will they ever learn right from wrong? That's what we have Q&A for. And save your questions, and I want you to challenge me, really. I want you to challenge me because we should have this discussion. I just don't want to do it as part of the presentation. So back to the store. So again, if you decide that, I hope you'll walk away inspired, at least to think about it. If you're married, talk to your spouse about it. If you're single, single parent, kol hakavod if you are. My mother was a single parent for 2.5 years, so you only have my respect if you are. So you reflect on this, you think about it, and say, is this something I really want to do? Why? For these reasons. We'd like to have our home be a place the kids can talk to, because they'll be able to talk to us, because they'll be able to know what's going on in their lives, we'll be able to guide them through things, we'll be able to provide them with that off-ramp. So let's think a little differently. Instead of a payment now, what are the barriers? And here's where, so why would children not tell your parents? Why would children not tell their parents about something that they want to talk about? Why would that kid not tell his father that he doesn't believe that there was really a mabul or that Kriyas Yamsuf really happened? So number one is they're afraid of punishment. Folks, let's go. Help me out. I need a drink. Not that kind of drink. Oh, by the way, folks, if you have teenagers at home, here's just a little practical stuff. Mark the back of your bottles of alcohol. Just put a little marker there so you'll know what the level is. It's good, and if your kids figure it out after a while, start tasting the stuff because they could get some apple juice in there and dilute it. I promise you, this is true story. I've been telling parents this for a long time. So a parent told Rabbi Horowitz, next time you do this, please tell them they should taste the stuff from time to time because the son boosted. The kid saw a little mark in the back of the bottle, so he dunked the whole bottle in a Coke, whatever it is, a Coke bottle in his room, and they put apple juice back. So he says, the mother, Baruch Hashem, nobody's drinking. When you see kids on Purim with a Poland Spring water bottle, they're not hydrating in all likelihood, okay? So, this is all part of getting it, folks. Okay, but what are these barriers? What are the barriers? Why would the children not tell you? And we have to eliminate every one, or they're not going to talk to us. So they're afraid of punishment. Right. I mean, if the Rebbe is doing something that they don't like, they might be uncomfortable talking about it, right? If a public figure is doing something that's inappropriate to them, they'll be very reluctant to talk about because you won't listen to them. That's right. I'm going to talk about it during the halo effect, right? Exactly, right. That's what the halo effect is all about. Okay, go ahead, please. They don't want us to think less of them. You're going to give me that look. And from now on, you're going to look at me like I'm not worthy of real deal. Anything else? Go ahead. Yep. I'm sorry? They're going to think you might not, right? That you won't believe what they're saying. You'll add to it or subtract to it or say it's not so bad. They'll think that it's much worse. What else, folks? With something like this, right? They try to block it out. Right. Right. So, but I don't know if that would be a barrier here, but it is something for parents to think about. What else? What other reasons would parents be reluctant? Why would kids be reluctant?
Maybe they're afraid that, like, once you know, you'll try to control them and
All right, what's it going to look like next time? Now that I told you that we had a little drink, we went to a Shalom Zacher and we drank apple juice. So they're going to come home. You're not going to let them go next time, right?
peer pressure as a group, like one kid rats.
Exactly. Are you going to keep that confidentiality? Are you going to tell your friends what I told you now? And your friends are going to tell somebody else, and everybody's going to know that I won't be able to go back to school because everybody's going to know that I'm the rat. So, guys, these are real barriers. These are real barriers. And if you remove 4 out of 6, they're still not going to talk to you. Think about it this way. If let's say all you're left with is confidentiality, I can add another couple if you don't get it, right? If they feel that you don't get it, they're less likely to talk to you. So these are real things, and we should be giving some real thought to what we can do to deal with this. I think the only way really to do it is to tell children that you're not going to punish them. And then you're going to, while you get there, you're going to come with this one, right? You're going to say, so what do you do? That's what we're doing Q&A for. But if you really want to do this, there really is no other way than to tell your children that we could talk about it, but we're not going to punish you for something that you tell us. And if you ask to keep confidentiality, we will, unless someone's life is in danger. And
What if it's a family member and they don't want to create a conflict with the family? Is that also a barrier?
that's absolutely right. So in other words, if they want to tell something about, let's say, a sibling did something that was dangerous, or they themselves don't want it to get out to the family. Parenthetically, I just want to mention, my wife Udi and I, we told our children they can tell one of us and not the other. And we will respect that confidentiality. We decided early on that was something, we felt that was important to tell the kids. And we actually told them, you can tell one of us and not the other, and we promise we will keep never lie to your children, never. Ever, ever, ever. Don't snoop on them without them knowing. Tell them you're going to supervise. I'll take it during Q&A also. But it's all about trust. If you break that trust, you can't ask them for trust later on. So my wife, Udi, we told the kids, you can tell one of us, and they by the way, we thought it would happen once or twice. It was remarkable. It just kept happening that they told one of us over the course of time. So we really need to eliminate those barriers. So that's the logical way of thinking about it. These are the things that we know helps to eliminate those barriers. That's the logical part of it. But there's a ton of research about adolescent disclosure, studies that talk about, again, the PowerPoint is available. I'm going to just very quickly, they trust that when it's an issue. These are 5 studies on what causes children to disclose to their parents. If there's a level of trust, if you spend family time together, they're more likely to talk to you. When they see you're a good communicator, when they feel close to their family, when they see their parents are open-minded and flexible rather than being rigid, and when you don't freak out. These are 5 attributes that real serious research showed to be helpful, and this is just an image of all of it. Again, I think it's important to know that research, it's not just Yankees thing, that it's, research really supports this. And these are two studies about child abuse disclosure. Child abuse disclosure, again, it's all footnoted here. You get the PDF from Reb Chaim. You can, okay, so it's interesting. One of the studies revealed that they were more comfortable talking to their peers rather than, that they sometimes spoke to siblings, older siblings, or friends rather than parents. It was about trust and to teach them what happens when the friend discloses to them. And they're less likely to report, people in the family. Let's do in plain view 1 or 2 more things, and I'm going to open to your questions. So I said at the beginning, the 3 things I really wanted to talk about in detail. This was the big idea, is have the kids talk to you, but the rest of 2.0 is to understand the other very strong factors that inhibit our ability to call out abusers, and sometimes make it difficult, like you said, it's difficult to even talk about. So this is just a magnificent article. He talks about, here are some excerpts from it, a New York Times editorial. They're about 700 to 1,000 words. This is 5,500 words. But it's really a masterpiece. And he talks about how people in positions, he talked about a guy named Clay, by the way, when I started, I started working in this space 18, 19 years ago, when I realized that so many teens that I was working with had been abused as children. I started working with teenagers in 1996. Rabbi Sharaz Zatzal was still alive. We started Project Yes together right before he passed away. But I started realizing how many kids were abused. And I read books like this about people who actually interviewed abusers and asked them how they got away with it and stuff like this. Not very pleasant. Don't recommend it for after dinner reading, but I felt it was something I needed to do. So this fellow named Clay was a teacher and a coach, and what he would really do, and this is exactly, I've seen it so many times, unfortunately, that what they would do is they would spend 2 to 3 years. And we talked about the scammer that does a couple of rounds of coffee before they pull out that piece of paper that could get him 20 years in federal prison. Sometimes they spend 2 to 3 years grooming the children. The good news is they will know if you spoke to your kids. They will know if you trained your children. They'll know if your children talk to you. Why? Because they're better at this than we are. Not the teaching part. They're terrified. When you walk out of here and talk to your kids, I'm telling you, if they were here, they would take videos of all of you and say, I'm not messing with these kids. They're afraid of children whose parents speak to them. They don't want children who... So what this Clay was like brilliant and horrible and evil. What he would do is, you look at the stuff, he started asking the boys, he was a soccer coach, so he says, we're having extra practice, can you stay late? So a few kids would say, I gotta call my mom first. What do you think he thought to himself? Not you, not you, not you, not you. Boom. And then he would touch the kids on the back, on top of the shirt, then under the shirt. When parents would call and say, hey, what was that all about? He'd say, I was checking for chickenpox. There was an outbreak, and they told us to check this out. And what did he think to himself? Not you, and not you, and not you. He would actually go to homes. I didn't have it in the excerpts. He would go to homes to see if it's chaotic, because the likelihood would be more that the parents wouldn't be. And it was fascinating, the horrible, evil. I'm telling you, the serial abusers all do stuff like this. So therefore, we can protect our children by doing this. That was one of the biggest chidushim when I first started and started speaking to experts. So how do you stop this? How could you stop it? It's impossible. Little kid, big adult, sicko. But that's why, since they're afraid of connection, they're afraid of education, so you're making them unattractive. You're making your children a nightmare for them. Halo effect is about having prejudgment about people. If you see, the original research was done in the Army, but the basic idea is what you were mentioning, that the halo effect means that if you have an opinion about somebody, the original research was done that the sergeants were giving better grades to the handsome soldiers, handsome and attractive soldiers. Why? Because they just felt like they had it together. By the way, it affects the grading on tests. If you take a Regents examination or a test that requires essays, that's not just multiple choice, the folks who grade the tests, generally speaking, I don't know all the states, in New York State it's like that, or was like that, they don't read 3 essays in a row. What they do is one teacher does all number 1s, second teacher does all number 2s, third one does all number 3s. Why? Because if you did well on number 1, they're going to teach, oh, this person, wow, that's breathtaking. What a genius, great kid. So when the second side, oh, he was probably a little tired, he didn't write every word. And they make prejudgments. We're all like this. Let's face it, we all have these biases. I gave an example yesterday about someone who reads the Torah. He lanes every week in shul, 30 years, 40 years, never made a mistake. You catch a mistake, my bet is that you won't open your mouth. Because you're going to say that this guy never made a mistake. Everybody knows that he's right. Nobody's going to believe me. And maybe I'll find out that maybe I didn't see it right, and maybe his Zayda has a different minute of saying this word, You'll do anything in the world other than getting up. So when kids had accusations about Chaim Walder, he won awards from this, he did that, biggest author in the from world, can't be. And who's going to believe me? That's what the halo effect's all about. And just like the person with the examination, we think we translate all kinds of ideas. Last thing, just world hypothesis. It's also a fascinating concept. We want to believe that we live in a normal world. None of us want to think that the world is a horrible place, and that people like this who do horrible things to children aren't struck by lightning. So it's another bias that we have, that we don't want it to be true. We don't want to have to deal with this chazarai, and we don't want to talk about it. So, and we don't want to believe it. And parenthetically, I saw some research recently that people of faith in all religions, someone did a study, it's fascinating that the person targeted this, they found that people of faith, the just world hypothesis is more powerful with them, because we believe that there's a din v'dayan, as we say. We believe that there's judgment in the world. We believe there's Rabbanu Shalom. So it's the same thing for Christians, lahavdil, for Muslims. People of faith, they have a harder time believing this, which is, we understand that it's a bias. These are lists of parenting clips on my, again, I'm doing a short version of lots of things that we talked about. I said on June 1st, January 2nd, we did 7 months building up to adolescence. We just started adolescence a couple of months ago. And like some of the things that I highlighted, things that are relevant to this discussion: the culture of your home, discipline techniques, negotiating with your children, Rav Olber's opinion. On the bottom, you can sign up. I have an Instagram page that everything is on. It's at Bright Beginnings Forum. I have a personal page that I do a lot of talks on. That it's at Yakov Horowitz. You can, if you have a WhatsApp, you can do it right now. I was an 8th grade Rebbe. Nothing distracts me. Don't worry about it. Yeah, if you want to sign up to get a WhatsApp, it's 845-540-2414. 845-540-2414. Just write subscribe, and you can feel free to cancel at any time. So these are just some resources that I spent a lot of time preparing for. We're also starting, we didn't really announce it publicly, but we're doing, part of what you have, the free books here. I'm really desperately trying to get a book in every home. So we're just encouraging people to have a little charity money at home, or give them out at a Wachtnacht, or send them out for gifts to whomever. And we're encouraging people. We had some people who bought safety books for their entire for the whole community. 1,000 families is $5,000. It's not saying it's not a lot of money, but it's an incredible investment to help children. I want you to know, we've gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters and emails over the first few months already. We got so many people that told us that the book literally saved their lives. So I'm not telling you to buy it because I made it. I made it because I wanted you to get it. ArtScroll and we're partnering. We're giving it for $5 free shipping for over 100 copies. So feel free to take advantage of it. Please do. Again, information is here on the flyer if you want to get it. It's safety@stuartschnee.com. Stuart, SCHNEE.com. He's our director of publications. I'm done, folks. Questions? Bring them. I told you at the beginning to challenge me and discuss it. I take it as a compliment if you ask a question. Of course, anyone wants to go, leave, you have a life, feel free to. I'll stay and answer questions as long as I can stand. Go ahead, please. Yes?
I've been seeing a lot of faces that are encouraging proper terminology for body movements.
Encouraging?
Proper terminology for body movements.
Yes. Good question.
Something that, sending my kid to yeshiva.
Absolutely, right.
I don't want my kid to be that kid.
Right.
I was wondering what you think.
So I got to tell you, that's something that look, our kids are all grown, our youngest, Kanena Hara, is 26. And my generation didn't do any of this stuff. We didn't do child safety education with our kids, it just wasn't around. We spoke to the kids, of course. But the research shows, what she's saying is, the research correctly shows that if you don't that you should not make children embarrassed to speak about their body parts. So when you use words like, euphemisms, which the Gemara does also, it's complicated because we grew up a certain way, and if you say, those words, it makes everybody uncomfortable. But I'm telling you the truth. We raised our kids already, but my children do that. It's supposed to, that's what the research shows, that when they bring shame into it, it lets them know, and you make a whole big deal by not saying the words for private parts. I think if you have to follow the research. We know that the research, you have to, and if your child winds up using, saying a word and the teacher says, yeah, say, we told him that. Tell him Horowitz told you to. I'll take the, I'm serious, you can tell him I said so. I've said a lot worse things in my life. No, but you really, by the way, I'm not comfortable, I'm telling you the truth. And a lot of it is a generational thing. And by the way, a lot of times, I'll talk about it if any of you are interested in talking about it, but I get tons of questions about this generational thing, that my generation isn't keyed into this whole private space, and like you said, you give kids mushy kisses, and the kids say they don't want it, or they get tickled, and we train them to say they can get out of an uncomfortable spot. It's a big deal when I give classes about grandparenting or to elderly parents, they say, what can we do to keep the children safe? I said, tell your grandchildren that if I'm doing something that makes you uncomfortable, tell me to stop and I'll stop. I just did it with our grandson an hour and a half ago. I was making a fool out of myself and giving him rides and stuff. I always say, I cannot tell you how close we are, Baruch Hashem, but I say, if you do something and you don't like, for whatever reason, doesn't have to be sexual, doesn't have to be inappropriate. It just means they don't like it. You're giving them a ride, and they get, giving them a horsey ride, and they get nervous. They don't like it. Whatever reason, they can say no, and you respond. And sometimes, if your parents aren't okay with that, then respectfully, you got to have a talk with them. That's in my opinion. Tell them Horowitz. We'll just blame Horowitz. Go ahead. Anybody else, folks? Oh, thank you. What did Rav Shmuel say? So thank you very much. The father asked for, a father called me, happened to have been a very yeshivish guy, lived in Flatbush. You just heard from his voice that he was very serious about Yiddishkeit and very learned. It just came across. I didn't know. I got to know him later, actually. I actually told him, I want to talk to you. I'd love to find out what you did. I'm a big best practices person. So I like to, when I have situations like this and I see a best practice, I ask them sometimes. Like, I wanted to interview the parents of a 15-year-old kid, I said, who got that teacher, that administrator exposed. Obviously, I would never do that. It so happens that I had the opportunity, but I wouldn't do that, of course. But this was comfortable, so I was able to ask him. I said, tell me what you did to get your children comfortable. By the way, folks, nobody meanders their way to something great. Let me just tell you, nobody just happens to get to a good space without thinking about it and putting in time. So that's the way it happens. So anyway, so this father, the kid told his father, a 17-year-old kid, great kid, Mitsuyan. He's married already, so don't bother with the shidduchim thing. Anyway, so it was many years ago. So he told his father, I don't believe what the teacher me in yeshiva. So I called Reb Shmuel Shlita, and I asked him what the father should say. And Reb Shmuel said that the father should say, tell his son, open up a siddur and show him Friday night davening. It says, Yimesh Naseinu Behem Shivim Shana, that we're here in this world for 60 or 70 or 80 years. And the yeshiva said that what's the shaykhus? What's the connection here? So he said that Pasuk's telling us that we have 70 years to understand the Rebbeinu Shalom. We can't see him. And we're young and we're foolish and we're selfish and we're whatever. So over the course of our life, we try to become more spiritual and connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we can't see and can't understand. So the father, I promise you, he said these words, I wrote it down. He said, Zog the Tati to Yiddish. Zog the Tati, tell the father that he should tell his son, you're 17 years old, you have 53 years to go. I promise you that's what he said. And it was like, Yeah, I said, like, whoa. It was just so brilliant. He just had, folks, if you're my age, I'm sorry, Moshe, please forgive me. Moshe Kurzman was one of our trustees in Project S for many, many years. Thank you, Moshe. I'm sorry, forgive me, please. Moshe's generation and my generation, if we would have asked Moshe, if you would have asked your Rebbe, I don't really believe what they're teaching me. He would have given you time out? What do you think? He's also an attorney. No, but, we wouldn't have gotten the timeout thing, so it was all the more remarkable, but that's what Shmuel said. Just be calm about it and just tell him, look, you have a question. He told him, Shmuel said, he didn't just say that. He said, look, tell him to find out, tell him to talk to you about it. If you don't have an answer to his question, maybe go to somebody in Kirov who could better answer, who's more used to these questions. Even a big Talmud Chacham in a regular yeshiva might not be dealing with this stuff. So that was his advice, but I thought it was just a masterpiece. Thank you for asking. Go. Anybody else, please? Yes?
So I was really happy to hear that you didn't launch into some rules that we should make for the kids, because I also believe that trust is so important, right? So if they feel safe to share, then we can trust them that they will, right?
Yep.
But I personally feel confused about which rules, what kind of rules are appropriate and which are not, right? I've heard people coming out after the recent story with just very blanket, no sleepovers, no this, no that, and I just felt oh, that's very black and white. How do we know where to draw the line in terms of what's, because our world had changed, and maybe when we were little, we didn't hesitate to have sleepovers, and today we should, but if that's, how do we
So that's very good. I happen to be a person that doesn't just shoot rules out. That's my nature. Because what I tell parents is that we should reevaluate everything. We should reevaluate everything. Meaning, we can't get extreme and just say, let's say, nobody's going to summer camp. Nobody's going for sleepovers. It doesn't work. And when we get extreme with anything, whether it's having our children make healthy choices for eating, or if we overdo anything, it bites you. So my recommendation, for example, for sleepovers, I tell parents that they should see if the parents of that home are on the same page as you in terms of supervision. So you call and say, listen, Mrs. So-and-so, Chani, whatever, I know you're having a sleepover. What are you doing in terms of supervision? And if they say, oh, Baruch Hashem, everything's wonderful, then see you later. And then you can tell your child, listen, she's a wonderful person. She might have more bitachon than I do, but, I'm not comfortable. She doesn't feel like I do about this. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. She's a wonderful person. Not bad. It doesn't work for us. And by the way, don't be shy about saying something like that. You're not saying anything nasty. If the home is chaotic, and you don't say it's chaotic, but you say, so they don't share our philosophy. The same thing with summer camp. I tell people to ask the heads of the summer camp, what's your policies on, do you train your staff for child safety education? What happens if a kid has a report? Who do they talk to? So these are good questions. And again, if they give you that speech, Baruch Hashem, never happened here. Give up your deposit and run away. But so again, I don't think we should be radical. I think we should reevaluate everything. That's the basic idea, and try to find something that's moderate. Guys, any questions?
Obviously, Torah and Chazal reach all parts of our lives.
Yes. Can you speak up, please? Go.
Do they subscribe to any type of punishment for someone who's a child abuser? The adult that abuses a child, is there a punishment which the Torah subscribes?
That's a fascinating question. He said there's a Torah dish out punishments for people who are child abusers. So, right here, it was over here, I guess. I had the great schus, Rab David Kohn-Shlita was here about 10, 15 years ago, presenting to 150 Rabbanim. It was a Rabbanim conference, and someone asked him this question exactly about child safety. And he said, no, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I always try to be precise. He said this as his introduction. And he said, people ask, why is there no Eidim and Hasra? We know that for any punishment that Beis Din dishes out, there has to be a warning, hasra, and there have to be 2 kosher witnesses that are male. So how could Bezdin or how could we support a court that doesn't have these values? And he also spoke about the fact that you don't find it that much in the Trufas overall. In the responsia over the Doris, over the generations, they weren't shy about talking about all kinds of problems. You don't see much about this. This is what Rab David said. So Rab David said as follows. He said that originally, until 50 years ago, in the general population, people didn't understand that this is a makas mavis, that it could be a life and death. It could be ruining a child's for life and literally cause them to, God forbid, take their lives. So he said people thought that this belonged in Even HaEzer, that there's a section, there are 4 sections of Shulchan Aruch. The one that deals with Even HaEzer, Hilchos Gitin and Kedushin and stuff like that. So it would be considered a forbidden sexual encounter, like let's say having an affair with someone, right? So people thought of that as a forbidden sexual act. So therefore, if you're punishing like that, then it has to follow the rules of Bezdin with Hasra on this. So Rab David said, now that we know what we know, it doesn't belong there. It belongs in Hilchos Retzicha. It belongs in Choshen Mishpat, which is tort damages and other damages. So Rab David, I was breathtaking when he said that. He said, it's Retzicha Shmiras Nefesh. So if somebody's going to kill someone, if somebody has you see someone with a machete chasing somebody else, you don't say, just a moment, let me get 2 Eidim here, right? You take them out or you do what you have to. So he said, it's not together. We know that this has the potential to take someone's life. Did I answer your question?
I'm not understanding, what is the punishment? If someone kills someone, they get me some.
Right, well, we don't have a Bezdin that gives punishments now. So we have a system. Rab David actually said, somebody asked a similar question to what you're asking. Were you at the Rabbinics conference, by the way? I was actually there. I was talking about prevention right afterwards. I had the great schus to have Rab David Cohen as a Rebbe in Camp Monk when I was 14 and 15 years old. So I happened to have the schus to speak right after Rab David, so I said, it's a big cover to be with Rebbe. I say, I've told this to Rab David privately before. I said, I call you Rebbe because you try to teach me. I was too rowdy then to learn, so you don't have to call me Talmud. But he said so many things that were really profound. So tell me precisely what you wanted to know.
Is there a punishment for someone who abuses a child?
So Rab David said that the criminal justice system is not perfect, but it's the best thing that we have. We know that it doesn't work when it's internal. When we say we're going to keep an eye, we're going to have a vad, tell me, I'll warn him, we know it doesn't work. So in fact, he said, by the way, yeshivas aren't perfect. There's a quote. He said, yeshivas aren't perfect, but all ma'anikach go to yeshivas. He said, no system is perfect, but this is the best way to keep our children from killing themselves. That's what he said. That was the best way. So we have a criminal justice system here, and we should go by their dictates, even if it doesn't match our halacha perfectly, which we do for other things. We know that, we basically were saying that we know and nothing else works, and nothing else has the ability to protect children. And even if it's imperfect, that's what he said. Thank you for asking. Yes, go ahead.
Recommendations for fostering that open communication and getting a child to speak for the ones that have the personality like the clams that don't want to talk?
Right. Okay, that's a great question. I have a whole week, 2 weeks of clips on that, by the way, parenting clips, where I go through it in detail about speaking, getting your children to do what doesn't come natural to them, especially children who don't talk, or teenagers who don't talk, right? So we did a whole 3 weeks on adolescent passage, which talks about the research and how they distance themselves from us as part of the normal, healthy process of starting their own lives. It's called adolescent passage. There's refueling. It's a whole shtickle Torah. I would encourage, if you don't mind. Like I said, I'm not. First of all, they're free, but I would encourage you to take the shir, take the course, but do this. But I do speak about this in detail. One of the things that you can increase the communication by just getting in the habit of asking a more, instead of generic questions like, how was your day, follow up on something that you know about. For example, I'm just giving one simple example. Let's say, how was your chemistry exam? Did you make up with that friend you fought with yesterday? How was the ride on the bus? Did you have, was somebody there that, was jumping around making everybody crazy? So in America, when you say, how was your day? It's basically, hi. If you don't believe me, go out on the way out, and when someone asks you, how was your day? Start telling them, they're going to run away. Actually, I had a flat tire this morning, and they don't mean it. How was your day? So if you ask a kid, ask my kid, how was your day? And they don't say anything. Of course they're not going to say anything, So there are techniques. Some children just don't do it well or different. You try to figure it out, but children are very intuitive, and they get it. One of the most intimidating things I found, that I started teaching when I was 22. I started as an 8th grade Rebbe. One of the most intimidating things is that I knew I had 25 sets of eyes on me waiting for an inconsistency, watching me to see when am I going to say something that they're not going to respect because it didn't match what I said earlier. So the kids get it. If you're sincere and you tell them. I actually made a video. It's on my YouTube page. It's at Yakov Horowitz. I don't remember the title. Before I did these daily parenting clips, I did a series during COVID. When COVID started, I did 7 classes. It's called Mentor or Supervisor. It talks basically about this idea. Do you want to mentor your kids or supervise them? So I wrote about relationships. I did it because I had the same parents every week. I had them at home. So I usually I just give a class like this and leave. So I had the same parents for 7 weeks. So we talk about that, a lot of different techniques. I found that children would love to talk to their parents. They would love to hear what you have to say. Doesn't mean they're going to listen. They would love to hear what you have to say. They would love. We talk about getting it. You know what the questions are today? You know what the kids want to know? Is marijuana worse than a cigarette? Is it worse than smoking? The guys tell me I shouldn't be smoking or drinking. I'm poor. Why is a drink worse than marijuana? Is legal in all places. In most places, it's getting more legal. I'm not saying everybody's asking this question, but when they have questions like this, I believe that they would love to talk to us if we do all of that stuff, which is not easy. So set yourself up. Some kids are more verbal than others. Some kids, you say, how was your day? And pull up a chair, So I think the children would love to be able to talk to us. We just have to encourage them, tell them about it, and be honest, with them. Okay, but I encourage you to go through it. There's a lot of stuff there. Anybody, folks? Go, please. Please, I just want to, I'm sorry, if anybody wants to leave, please feel free to. I'm delighted to stay and take questions. I'm not throwing you out, chas v'shalom. But I'm saying, don't feel uncomfortable. It's not Kavadik to Rabbi Horowitz, Shlita. Come on. You want to go, Gesundheit. Go, please, yes. Yes. I'm not sure you should use the word touched in this. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, please, yes.
And how also taught the teacher and kids to put their rabbis on a pedestal and that.
Right.
And I feel like older kids are a little bit more intuitive to understand when we explain to them the difference of the rabbi could be amazing and whatever, just know when something's uncomfortable. But I feel like with younger kids, it creates like this cognitive dissonance almost, where like it's either one.
Somebody's got to go home. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Right. So some of that is probably, the truth is that this halo effect thing is really not relevant for young kids like this. It's not that much of an issue because it doesn't, it is very difficult to convey that. But you should say that nobody means nobody. That you should say. In other words, let's say when you're talking, so certain components of that, if you say even though people, like grandparents or other people that we love and we respect, there's still not a lot of touch in a private space. And there's still not a lot of time to keep secrets. That these rules apply for everybody, even people that we respect. You can try. I think it's something you should say. It is more difficult because they do have, I taught 8th grade so I was particularly sensitive to this. I always said up to 6th grade, it's, my Rebbe's the lucky Rebbe's, And then the funniest thing is when they leave my class, they go away to 9th grade, they start talking to the Rabbeim in the 3rd person. So they come back to yeshiva and they say, how's the Rebbe doing? And I'm like, you were a terrorist 2 years in my class. What are you doing here? So it's funny. they go through these phases where Rebbe can do no wrong, and then later, it's like parents. The parents can do no wrong, and the parents, they can't do anything right. But I think you should have that conversation with your kids and tell them that these rules apply to everybody. That's really what the message is. And like we said, the halo effect is real. But look, with the pedophiles who've been active and doing this for many years, there are so many crazy things that they were doing that people just let it go. I could tell you so many examples. I don't want. I said I wouldn't scare you. You know, there's a picture of Nehemiah Weberman. I was very involved in that case. I went to the trial every day. He was an abuser and whatever. There's a picture of him having an ice cream with a 16-year-old girl in a pizza shop smack in the middle of Williamsburg. Now, imagine if I did that, and it obviously wasn't. Imagine me, the Manal Shlita. If they would run me out of town. Imagine I was just sitting there. I'm telling you, sitting there having. But you read Jerry Sandusky, and you read that article that I suggested you read, you see it so many times. It was a big scandal a number of years ago. A guy had a few seminaries, and he was 4 or 5 years ago. I got, someone asked me to get involved in that one too. And this guy was picking up girls, students, 19-year-old girls in seminary, 18, whatever in seminary. He was picking them up 12, 1 o'clock in the morning and taking them out in a car. Because there was a whole question whether they should close the seminaries down, because the staff was tainted by, whatever, not for now. But someone asked me, one of my trustees asked me to get involved in it and try to figure it out, because it was, would have been bad a lot of different ways. So I spoke to some of the staff members. I'm like, whoa, like what? Imagine if I showed up and just say, hey, Rivki, come in the car. Like what? What's this all about? So I'm saying they get away with stuff. And it's bizarre that they do. Let me put it to you this way. Right after the Walder thing, I did a number of talks on social media. You can go and look on my YouTube page; they're all there. I interviewed Dr. David Pelkowitz and asked him about how parents should speak to their kids. So this was very interesting. So one of the women raised their hand. And she said, Rabbi Horowitz, please, it was after Dr. Pelkowitz left. She said, look, Rabbi Horowitz, I don't mean this. She apologized 100 times. I said, cut it out. What do you want to say? She says, how can I trust you and Dr. Pelkowitz? I'm sorry? And then she apologized another 12 times, which was nice. So I said like this. I said, if trust means that you think I'm an ethical person, and I'm an honest person, and that if I said there's a study like this, I check, I care, my words matter to me, and I'm honest about what I say, and I don't just make up stuff, and you say, I trust Rabbi Horowitz like that, I'll be very honored. And if trust means that, whatever it is, I said, if trust means that I can take your 12-year-old daughter out, don't trust me. That's what I said. That you would allow me to be alone to give a bar mitzvah lesson to your son, and say, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Horowitz Shlita, I can't. Don't trust me. Don't trust Dr. Pelkowitz. Don't trust anybody. That's the message. That's the message. If trust means respecting someone, our Chazal calls say kabdei v'chashtei. That's what they meant. Respect, but respect, but be suspicious. That was kabdei v'chashtei. That's what it means. Give kavod, but be suspicious. And I think that's the message. It's really the message to the children that you're not supposed to give people trust to do things that are wildly inappropriate. You don't look like I answered your question. Did I? No. You asked the question, didn't you? Right. So I'm saying, maybe you don't look like I answered the question either.
Basically, there's no official rules. Like you said, you need to throw out rules.
Right.
But you have to get the point.
Can I give you a rule that's good for this? But the Torah, right? So some things are in the Torah, right? So a violation of yichud is in the Torah, and you see that the serial pedophiles get away with yichud and stuff, like I'm telling you. But it's not only yichud. You want to know? You want to know a general rule? If you don't trust the custodian to do it, don't trust anyone. I don't mean custodian, chas v'shalom, that they're less. If you don't trust people outside our community, let's say it that way. If you wouldn't trust somebody you say, well, can I give my daughter, could I let my daughter ride for an hour in the car with somebody else? So you'd say, no, I got to know who he is, where's he going, call me, you get a phone, right? So don't send it, I don't take, if you asked me to drive your daughter home, wouldn't I, or your son, I don't take his in the car with me.
Before, someone was asking you about sleepovers, you said reevaluate everything.
Right.
But let's say you have someone already doing things for you or whatever it is. How do you approach a situation where your daughter has been sleeping there multiple times, and then out of the blue call them up and be like, so, like how do you get over that social awkwardness?
Blame it on Horowitz. No, I'm sorry. Look, you say, look, well, we're very rattled by the Walder thing, and we're reevaluating all. Well, what's wrong with saying that? We're reevaluating all areas of our life and things that we know that there are things that if we want to change the reality of what's going on, we're going to have to change practice that we have, and we're rethinking this. And not just you, the other places that our kids go to, we're starting to think more about it. What's wrong with saying that? If they get offended by that, then it's not right for you anyway. You gotta, and ultimately, the rubber meets the road. You gotta speak up. I'm saying, but, so I don't give you a rule. If you don't, I can't tell you how many times, like, people, I happen to be a little, over the top, not over the top, but that's not for other people, for myself. I was always very, very careful about personal boundaries. I was a head counselor in a summer camp 39 years ago. The counselors thought I was crazy. I thought I was a weirdo. I never went into a bunk without the counselor there. And I promise you, it was 39 years ago. I used to make them wait there, because a kid's homesick. I was the head counselor. By remote control, I'm going to make the kid feel better. You have to go, the bed's like an inch away from each other. Get over here, right here. Everybody knew that. Everybody in camp knew. So, that's my boundaries. When I give classes to Rabbanim, to teachers, to principals, to educators, I tell them the same thing. And again, like I said, it wasn't done before, but we have to change. It's not, we're gonna, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're gonna keep getting what we're getting. Yes, please, go.
In terms of the abusers, like, were they weird children? What did their mothers do?
Great question.
That
That's a fantastic question. That's really a fantastic question. One of the books that I read, I mentioned that I read some books that were not pleasant after dinner conversations to help me understand this sugya better, this topic better. One of the books was written by a psychiatrist, a female, who spent 20 years going around the country to interview serial pedophiles. How's that for a job description, huh? And she wrote at the beginning, it was a 2x4 hit me in the head when I read this. And she said in the Hagdama, in the introduction, she wrote that I started on this project 20 years ago because I wanted to give you all people a profile of what you should look for. Sorry, folks, I can't do that. There is no profile. You just have to watch what they do.
Now, I notice you keep saying, like, a serial pedophile. Is that the only type there is?
No, of course not. No, thank you. See, this is why I like questions. I get to clarify. Hey, we're left, come back. No, I want to explain what I meant by that. The halo effect doesn't really make a difference with someone who abuses a couple of children because nobody notices it anyway. That's what I meant. What I meant is someone like Walder and someone like Weberman, people who've done this for so many years to so many beautiful children, and that should have been noticed. That was my point with serial pedophiles. Again, what we said, the halo effect, the theory of the just world, all those things, if it's somebody that's, God forbid, the reason that serial pedophiles are so notorious and the reason they abuse so many children is because they specifically look for positions that get them around children. So what I mentioned is you can't get away with doing this for 25 years if people didn't notice things that they should have noticed. That's my real frustration in the message. That if people, that's why I'm doing this class. I want you to know what I know. And tell your friends that you're going to do things differently with the supervision. That's what I want you to do. I want you to think differently. That's it. One of the I wrote over here, whatever we wrote at the top of the class. The class says 2.0. You know what I'm saying? You should know what I know. You have children. Why are you not entitled to know what I know? That's what I'm here for. I'm here to share what life has taught me. I was in college, pre-med. I wanted to be an oral surgeon. And I left at 17 years old. I started teaching a remedial class in a summer camp. And I just fell in love. And I said, this is, it took me 3 years, 5 years to realize it. But I said, this is what I was meant to do. I dropped that all. And I decided to devote my life to educating children. If you would have told me then that I'd be sitting here talking about this chazarai, I would have gone back to dental school. I wouldn't believe that this is where I am. But this is it. This is what the hour requires. I'm here. So I'm saying we have to think differently. We have to be comfortable reevaluating and looking at things. And you should know what I know. So that's the thing with the serial pedophiles, that they did this in front of everybody. Read that article on Plainview. It was right in front of everybody. How could people not notice? We know why they don't notice, because of the theory of the just world, because of the thing. If you're interested, folks, I said, do it now if you don't care. If you do Times of Israel, Yakov Horowitz, I met Chaim Walder twice and almost became his partner. Did any of you see that piece? Okay, trust me on that one, folks. This is a Talmida, Baruch Hashem, good. I met Chaim Walder and almost became his partner. I wrote a piece in Times of Israel about when we took this book. Baruch Hashem is translated into Yiddish. I worked with the heads of Kiryas Yael in Monroe to make it in Yiddish, that it should be culturally congruent, and 7,000 families got that book. Want to tell them what's hanging in your office? You don't want to? Okay. I won't tell you that he has a picture in his office. He has a picture of that issue, that thing, because he felt I was very moved when I saw it. It was a picture of one of the educators there with 300 kids with a book in his hand, in each hand, speaking the Yiddish book. So we translated it to Yiddish and we did it to Hebrew. So the Yiddish version took us a year and a half. So I went to Eretz Yisrael. I knew the situation was way worse than America for a whole variety of reasons. So we wanted to get it translated. Every single person told me that I should go to Chaim Walder because he's the man. I said, I want to have somebody. I don't have a translator. I don't have a graphic artist who knows Israeli. Our daughter, Leah, took 800 pictures in Eretz Yisrael when she was on a trip. She took this book, okay, Leah, I love you, wherever you are. So she took this picture, it's a picture of a kitchen. She knocked on the door and said, can I take a picture of your kitchen? And she took pictures of kitchen, whatever that has there, she took pictures so we can give it to the, who needs this? I don't have a distributor, I don't have where to put the books, I'm not a businessman, leave me alone. So I said, who can I partner with? Everybody said, go to Walder. So I met him twice. I'm sorry? I wrote in the article what the lesson was. We had coffee, right? We actually did. No, we met twice for an hour, and after I was only there for a few days. We met one day for an hour, the next day for an hour, and at the end, at the end of the second hour, he gave me his hand and told me that I'd love to work with you, Rabbi Horowitz. It's a pleasure getting to know you. I would love to work. Now, in retrospect, you know why, because he would work, and all my books would be in the dumpster now in Israel. I thank Hashem many times each day that I walked away.
Right.
So I just had a bad feeling. But he was ready to go. And then overnight, we scheduled the third meeting, and I called him back in the morning, and I said, Reb Chaim, it was nice meeting with you. I'm going in a different path. He says, why? I said, I don't want to go into it. I said, I don't know. I'm just not going. And people asked me why, and I really didn't know. I just thought, my wife said, Yak, what's going on? This is such a great idea. Now you need a schlep all over. I said, I don't know. I have a bad feeling. During education, we say, trust the instincts. I had just trust my instincts, and I walked away. So what I wrote in the piece was, and I think it's very relevant for everyone, I wrote there that I'm not a detailed person. So I don't notice things. I really don't. I'm not proud of it. That's who I am. You know, if you ask me, I'm not kidding, what color the carpet is in my study, I wouldn't know. So I'm not because I'm a tzaddik, and not because I'm a rosh, or just like whatever. That's my nature. That's my nature. I think I wrote in the piece. My wife told me, she told me to take my lovely, wonderful wife, Odi, we're married for 41 years, Baruch Hashem, she's my best friend. She says, Yankee, take the cactus plant from the front and put it in the back. It was right before the summertime. So I said, she saw that. I didn't say anything, but she saw that like blank look, like what cactus plant? It was right in front. I passed by it 10 times every day. It was in front of my house. It was in front of my entrance hall. So what I wrote is that I won't know what any of you were wearing, or if your hair was combed, or if you did this, I don't notice stuff. So I said I didn't notice the plaques on his wall. I said I have a disability that I don't notice things. So that is a blessing and a curse like everything else. Sometimes you lose a car keys and it takes you an hour to find it 3 times a day. But I didn't notice anything about him, that this is my nature. I took his measure of a person without seeing the pictures of the president's award. I'm sorry?
It just intuition. It wasn't about anything.
No, I wasn't distracted by his halo effect. I looked at him, Chaim Walder, and looking at him only, I had a bad feeling. And I felt that, obviously, look, I've been around the block a few times, but I wrote in the piece, I'm not brighter than the average guy. But I think that, I said, that's the point, but if we would look at people without all of that stuff and just look at them and watch what they do and see them going around and hanging out, taking kids, and if we stopped looking at all this mishigas, we would also notice that things are wrong. That was my recommendation, the takeaway. We should stop looking at stuff. Who cares what they're wearing? I wear a longer reckle. It's very nice. I zayded it. I put it on. Fine, great. What difference does it make? You shouldn't trust me, like I told the lady. Yes, question? You had your hand up?
Yeah, I had a twofold question.
Please. We don't charge by the question. Go ahead.
How do you promote a dialogue with squeamish teenagers?
About this?
Maybe try to have a discussion of when will not want to have that discussion with you.
About child safety?
Safety, personal stuff, yeah, like things you have to discuss with them.
Okay, you mean like talking to them about body changing and puberty and all of that? I think we need to go, folks. Good night, everyone. All right. No, so it's a great question. That's why I was yelling during this whole thing. I kept writing an article after article and making all kinds of videos and talking on even social media. The best time is when they're interested in this. That's why I said this Walder thing is the best time to talk to your kids. Most parents, like, you meet your friends at carpool. Did your son tell you? Did he ask you? Did yours? Baruch Hashem, my kid didn't talk about it. So it's the best time to talk about it because they're interested. You look up what a teachable moment is. So that's about child safety and other things like that. As far as speaking to your children, I think all of you should have these conversations with the children about their bodies and how it changes and talk, in a way that, look, you have to be yourself ultimately. The real point that you want to do is to let your son or daughter know that they can come back and talk to you about it. That's really that's most important. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the kids usually they have too much information from the internet, especially today's kids. It's not they don't have enough information, they have too much information, and they just, like, it's coming, the kids it's like, come and get me with a fire hose. If you look up anything, look if latex gloves gives you blisters or whatever you come, you'll see all kinds of crazy. This, that, they want to know, that's really what they want to follow up with the questions. This one said this one said that, I saw that, what's the deal? So, have conversations with your children that explain puberty to them, explain that the body's change. If they ask you, never lie to them. It's okay if you say, look, I don't need to go into all these details. Rebbitzin told me, related to child safety, she says, I told my kids that by 18 you'll know everything. You could ask me, but you could say that I don't want to discuss all of this, but, something. 40 years ago, before the internet, when I went into Chinuch, I asked friends of mine what to do when the Chumash or Gemara talks about matters of sexual nature, like what should I do? Like, do you skip it? Do you not, right? So, true story. For the internet, okay? When the world was pristine and over, So one of the people I asked was a 6th grade Rebbe. He burst out laughing when I told him. I asked Rebbeim, who were 10, 15 years older than me. I was 22 then. So he said, Yankee, you're going to love this one. I skipped something in the Gemara, and the Chumash was. So he said, one of the kids raised his hand. He said, Rebbe, if there's something you don't know, we'll be glad to tell you. I'm not kidding. And by nature, children have always been attracted to something that's, if it's forbidden, you black out a word in the book, that's not everybody. I mean, it's so silly when you start banning stuff and that, you make them popular. It's crazy. It never worked. It never did work, never will work. I'm saying it's late at night, folks. Let me tell you, I promise you this is a true story. I don't even think you know this one, Maish. I promise you this is a true story. We had 2 or 3 kids that were sick. I was probably teaching 5, 6 years. And we had it's a very, very difficult topic. I was teaching Gemara Makkos to my students. And there's a very complicated topic called Ilon Basa Knife. It talks about if there's a tree at the end of Ir Miklat and the border, what happens if the trunk of the tree is in Ir Miklat and the branches are outside. So if the guy does it go by the bottom or the top, by the way, if you're bored, there's a guy in Israel who made limud football videos. You got to look at it, limud football. He took football catches and compared it to Hilchah Shabbos. I happen to have stayed in the kid's house. It's genius, it's hysterical, and it's brilliant. This guy's going to be a world-class Rebbe. He was 15 years old. Look up limud football, Limmud, limud football. He has a thing, the Julio Jones, and he talks yeshivish. I mean, this kid really knows how to learn. He says there's a go bust of the goof, a go bust of the hands, Anyway, I remember that I hadn't slept in 2-3 nights. And I looked at the Gemara and I said, Yankee, there is no way that you're teaching this Gemara today. I didn't have the energy. I promise you this is true. Can we turn off the video? No, sorry. I went like this. I don't know, just, the hamster in my brain was running all over the place because I was exhausted. So I told the kids, I said, boys, turn the page. We're skipping this. We're skipping today. I had never done it before. I never skipped anything all the years. So I said, we're turning the page. Turn the page. We're skipping. Immediately, I taught most of the years, I taught kids who were not yet successful at learning. I volunteered for the weakest track in the school. So it's like right away, they didn't give a flip about the Gemara. All of a sudden, they started looking at this. I couldn't keep a straight face. So what I did is I wanted them to go learn it at home, so I shouldn't have such a hard time teaching that. I promise you. So, but I just did it with a straight face. I said, boys, turn the Gemara. I said, hey, Rebbe, why are you teaching? No, I made believe I made believe I was uncomfortable. I said, please, we're not talking about it. Don't, just go, let's go back to the Gemara. The next Gemara was very easy. That night, I got a phone call from one of the parents in the class. I just went home, told my wife, I said, you're not going to believe what happened in yeshiva today. I said, the meds were wearing off. I did something really weird. I skipped this Gemara and made a whole thing. So she says, oh my God, Yankee, you're impossible. Anyway, I got a phone call from one of the fathers. One of the fathers, I don't think he was religious. He came from a very Hasidic community. He knew how to learn very well. And I don't think he was religious at the time, but his kids were in yeshiva. So he called me up. He figured out what I did, because he's a Chevraman. So so he told me, he says, Rabbi Horowitz, die bist da za Scheigitz. I don't use the word when it's Gentile. Scheigitz means a rascal in Yiddish. It doesn't only mean a Gentile. I never use the word Gentile. So he made, you Chevra, he says, die bist da za Scheigitz. I said, what do you do? I said, oh my God, I had these visions of getting fired. I said, what do I do now? He said, you skipped the Gemara, you skipped the Gemara, so I should teach it to him. I promise you this is true. So I said, what do you mean? So I go, what are you talking about? He says, man zin kim taheim, the thick chassid, man zin kim taheim from yeshiva. My son comes home from yeshiva, he's calling his friends, did you find out the Gemara? He says, he bothered me. He knows I haven't learned the Gemara in 40 years. It's so funny. He said, this is a schwere Gemara. He says, it's an impossible Gemara. See, he says, I started laughing. He said, I didn't want to tell my son because I know he respects you. He said, he says, you fooled all those Americana parents. He says, I promise you, ich bin a Scheigitz and die bist a Scheigitz. He says, one Scheigitz understands another. And he burst out laughing. He said, I'm not telling you that, don't worry about it. He said, I had such nachas. I just wanted to tell you that somebody got you. And they came back the next day. Everybody knew the Gemara perfectly. So what's the message? Just be yourself. And, when you make a big fuss out of it sometimes, it just like makes the kids crazy and they get all nervous. If they tell you they don't want to talk about it, just then say, that's fine, I'm available if you want to talk. Okay, folks, I hope I ended off with something that was of interest. You can come up if you have questions, but I think we'll let everybody go, especially the wonderful videographer. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.